Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny is directed by James Mangold, who directed Logan, Ford v Ferrari, and Walk the Line. The film stars Harrison Ford, Phoebe Waller-Bridge, Antonio Banderas, and Mads Mikkelsen, and tells the story of Indiana Jones years after his adventure, finally going into retirement, but he's secluded, lonely, and doesn't have any friends or family around him. And when his goddaughter comes into the picture and steals an important artifact from his collection, he has to go find it, and this leads him on a journey to uncover the Dial of Destiny once again that he has lost back a long time ago. He has to stop a former Nazi from retrieving it and going back in history to kill Hitler and basically be the leader of the Nazis and do his own evil plans. Now, I'm a huge fan of the Indiana Jones films. I think the original trilogy is some of the best action that we've seen in the 80s. In fact, of all time, I would say. The practical stunt work and the locations and the acting in general and the sense of adventure and scale is just absolutely phenomenal. Spielberg and Lucas were on top of their game in the 80s with these films. I still rewatch them once in a while, like every year at least. Raiders of the Lost Ark, like these films are legitimately incredible. And Kingdom of the Crystal Skull wasn't really that great. It was quite a disappointing sequel and follow-up to the original trilogy. So it's understandable that they want to leave this iconic franchise on a high note. With James Mangold coming in, who came off the success of Logan and Ford v Ferrari, how does this film hold up compared to the other films? Well, let's see. How? Let's talk about the positives first, okay? Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones is once again fantastic here. This is a different type of performance from Harrison Ford here as a character. He's much older. He's a lot more grumpier than usual. He is alone. He is jaded from life. And quite frankly, he's a man at the end of his rope. And while this is not the kind of characterization I will love from Indiana Jones, I think Harrison Ford was able to bring a pretty good performance of a character that's in this situation. I think he was able to still be a presence in the film. I still think he was able to bring a bit of charisma. You could tell that his heart was in this project, and you could tell how much Indiana Jones, the character, means to Harrison Ford here. The color grading and look is better than Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Hello, this is after my recording of this review. Another positive I would love to give this movie in particular is that the score by John Williams is fine. I think it's a good score, much better than what he did for Rise of Skywalker. That's a given at this point. Anything is better than that film. But it's not one of my favorite of his scores. He does motifs well for the Indiana Jones themes as usual. Brings some new flavors here and there, but honestly there wasn't much noteworthy to the score in my opinion. Just felt like a classical type of John Williams score that you could expect. So nothing much there to really boost the grade up or change my opinion of the movie in general. But it is leaning towards the more positive end, so my opinion on the score is that it's fine.
Going into my negatives, I think this is a truly awful movie. I think that this film does a whole lot more wrong than Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Sure, it doesn't look as fake. That being said, this film still looks fake. There's a lot of green screen here, and a lot of it is very noticeable. The CGI effects stick out, and compare it to even Crystal Skull at times, I would say that this film has some truly awful visual effects. I just wish that some of these newer Indiana Jones films could just look at the original films and understand, go to an actual location, film in the actual outdoors, and just have the actors just punch each other out there instead of in a green screen room. What I loved most about the original trilogy is that the fight sequences and the action sequences itself feel real because they were real. Harrison Ford was legit hanging on the side of a tank. He was legit running outdoors away from natives who are really actors, but still, he is fighting bad guys outside under the cars and crawling himself from one side to the other. And whether it's Harrison Ford doing it himself or stunt double, that kind of action is what I want to see. Here, I understand Harrison Ford cannot do a lot of stunts himself anymore. He is too old. With that said, he is still the main character doing a lot of action stuff. And to be honest, it doesn't look right. It does come across as real fake. And as much as I admire Harrison Ford actually attempting to do some stuff himself here, I still think that this film doesn't really do a good job with the action and how it handles Indiana Jones in these sequences. There isn't much of a beat down to his character apart from stuff that are more emotionally charged by his granddaughter and the peers around him. There isn't any moments like in the original films where just someone is pummeling him to the ground and he has to get back up. And while I understand that that's not realistic for his age, that is what we love to see Indiana Jones go through, to try and see how far he's able to push himself both mentally and physically to the limit in order to accomplish the goal that he wants to accomplish. But here, it most of the time feels like he's being dragged by other people in the plot itself, until later in the film where he has to push forward himself and make some of his own decisions. A lot of the plot is motivated by a lot of people around him instead of himself. And it makes a character that to me is not fun to watch, that I really don't care for. And despite watching him in many other adventures in 4 movies prior, it doesn't come across as relatable to me. I found the characterization of Indiana Jones itself really bad. I did not like what they did with him, and while I do appreciate trying to do something different, the idea of him being a secluded loner away from his friends and family is something that I really do hate. And while I know it's a topic in the film itself, one of the major themes of the film, of his loneliness and secludedness from everyone around him, and how that's caused by quite a bit of emotional pain, that's understandable. It's only talked about in one brief scene, and that's it. I think there could have been something much more to what they want to do with the character of Indiana Jones here. This film just wants to go from one location to the other, accomplish one aspect of the plot, then head on over to the other. At times, it feels a lot like Rise of Skywalker, where there are few glimpses and moments of good writing here, but as a whole, it's just characters going from one location to the other, to the other, to the other, until they get to the thing they need to get. And it doesn't feel like there's much in terms of character being done here. And the character of... crap, I forgot her name, but she's played by Phoebe Waller-Bridge. She is such a jerk in the film and quite an unlikable character. I understand that's her point, but she is like supposed to be a femme fatale. She's supposed to be like a geeky nerd. She's supposed to be an adventurer. What is she supposed to be? It's like the writers wanted to do a lot with her character, add a bunch of stuff to try and give her some sort of significance to the plot. It makes her quite unlikable. It makes her too snarky at Indiana Jones. There's very little moments where she recognizes her flaws, and when she does eventually, it feels too late and forced. And there are still times afterwards where she just feels like the same character. But I understand what they were trying to go for. She's trying to learn. She has to learn a lesson. Try to be a bit more emotionally mature. I see what they're doing with her. It just it wasn't really executed that well. And I did not really care for her. And I found her quite unlikable for most of the film. So I didn't care for her. The villain played by Mads Mikkelsen is honestly forgettable, and I don't understand how you could hire such a talented actor and give him nothing to work with. It's like they wanted to do a Marvel type film where they want to focus on the heroes and give very little characterization to the villain. Also, his villain just pops out of nowhere at every time. Like, he would come out of nowhere with no explanation, know exactly where the heroes are, and plan everything out ahead. Like, the script should have been looked at more and tried to connect the dots between him and the heroes and his path to chase them, because it's like he knows exactly where they are, and it becomes too much of him finding him without any sort of idea where they could be. It's like they could be anywhere. Like, how were you able to find them like this? Was there like a deleted scene where you figure out something and you know where they're headed? The characterization and writing here for the plot is just a mess. It felt like the movie does not know what to do with its characters. It has ideas on what it wants to do with its characters, but it never felt like it fully it never felt like it wanted to commit to any one goal for these characters, and just want to cram so much for these characters to go through, and it makes them either Mary Sue's and unlikable characters, or forgettable characters, or misguided characters, and it feels like they have no true relevance to the story, and it feels like the plot doesn't have any stakes at all. And once it got to the third act, I'm gonna be honest, I checked out a bit, and I did almost fell asleep. Once the interesting stuff started happening, I didn't really realize it until I was fully awake once again. While I did watch the entire film, there were moments where I felt like my eyes were getting tired, I didn't care for it anymore, and it was like, I don't care about this film, I want to sleep, oh, but this is happening. The film dragged out way too much, and I don't get it. How could a movie be 2 hours and 35 minutes, yet it had no idea what it wanted to do with its characters throughout the entire runtime? The movie was boring and a chore to go through, and while I wanted more characterization, the movie should have trimmed down the plot a whole lot and try to focus on only the important stuff, while giving room to characters to grow and for us to understand them. But the movie felt like it just wanted to move the plot line and get going, and I don't like that. It makes the adventure feel lifeless. Honestly, this film is probably the most lifeless Indiana Jones story out there, in my opinion. Very boring villain, boring adventure, terrible special effects, mind you. I think the visual effects here look pretty bad, though I will say that the first 10 minutes are pretty entertaining and the best parts of the film. Harrison Ford is quite entertaining in the role still. He does a good job with his character. But apart from that, I found the rest of the other characters to be either unlikable or very forgettable. The kid in the film that is with Phoebe Waller-Bridge is just a bootleg version of Short Round, and I didn't find him memorable in the slightest. And in the ending, it felt like the worst kind of fan service. It felt like the movie just stopped, added a bunch of fan service in there, and to be honest, I'm trying to be vague here, because if you want to see the movie and if you end up liking it, that's good. I applaud you. If you enjoyed the film and you disagree with me, I'm happy. But for me, I'm trying to be vague here. Once the film got to its ending, it felt rushed. It felt like there wasn't enough time spent having us learn what is really going on. And when the film is doing a lot of fan service stuff in this moment, it made me feel like I'm being pandered to at this point. And it wasn't until like the last second of the ending where I was like, oh, so this is the end. This is how we're gonna end things. Well, at least I watched it at a student theater for free and did not have to pay money, so I guess there's that going for it. Guys, I didn't like this film. I'm sorry. I really do want to like it. I really do. There are elements of the film that I like. The first 10 minutes were really interesting and good. The de-aging effect on Harrison Ford worked most of the time, and Harrison Ford himself does a pretty good job. But James Mangold feels like he's sleepwalking through this direction. The screenplay is a big mess. Like, it has no idea what to do with its characters. And it felt more like it wanted to focus on the plot instead of the themes of what it wanted to do, balancing out with a good plot. It had no arc. It had a story, yes, but it wasn't executed well. It had no idea what it wanted to be. It felt like a movie that was at war with itself. And for a budget of $300 million, there is no excuse for the special effects to look this bad. The action is pretty stale. I wish they could have done more practical action sequences here. It doesn't look as fake as some shots in Crystal Skull. But that being said, the action here still isn't good. In fact, I will say that there are some aspects of the action in Crystal Skull that are better than some stuff here. The color grading, I would say, is a lot better than Crystal Skull, but honestly, that's going to be a given, because that's like a simple change that anyone could do. This film, in my opinion, was just soulless. It was lifeless. It wasn't Indiana Jones to me. And I think that Crystal Skull actually had a much better and more satisfying ending to the character as a whole and the entire franchise in general than what this movie had to offer. It felt anticlimactic. It felt rushed. It was not the type of ending I wanted this character. It just disappointed me. I really didn't like the film. I don't recommend it. Not even to hardcore action fans or Indiana Jones fans. I say just skip this one. I'm going to give The Dial of Destiny a D. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please leave a like, subscribe, comment, and I'll see you guys next time.